Okay. All right, it is 5:30. I will call the work session to order. Up first, we have the 2023 Street Improvement Project. Mr. Schmidt.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Happy New Year.
Yes, Happy New Year. Happy to be here. So
We're happy to have you.
We're going to kick off a fun topic for 2023.
Do you have your microphone on?
Is this better? Okay. We're going to be talking about the pavement management program and the 2023 street project that we're going to be looking to kick off here. So I have a short presentation tonight that I'm going to bring up first. I can figure out how to use Zoom. Let's see. It's hard to imagine that I couldn't use it already for all these years.
Out of practice.
Why isn't it letting me? Oh, here we go. Gotcha. Here we go. Share. Thank you.
You can go if you want to go presentation mode.
Okay. Good. So, what I wanted to do tonight, just to kick things off, was kind of just take a step back and just do a refresher on what the pavement management plan contemplated a couple of years ago, review some of the goals that we had set at that time, and then really jump into this year's project, look at the scope of it, the budget, and then our recommendations and next steps. So hard to imagine, but we actually have been talking about pavement management for a couple of years now. 2021 was a big year. We did all the street ratings. We looked at different strategies for pavement management, and we ultimately ended up in the fall of 21 with developing our first 5-year comprehensive plan for the city of Carver. 2022 marked the first year of the program. We focused in the Eagle Ridge neighborhood and did the streets over there, so that was very good. We had a successful first year. So tonight what we're doing is we're looking at year 2 of the program. So just to review, pavement management goals, number 1, obviously, is to extend the pavement life to minimize the reconstruction efforts. That's the primary, the first goal of a pavement management plan. By doing so, it just minimizes the overall cost the city has to put towards their street system over time. Number 2, setting a clear budget expectation with the plan helps us just do that budget over a 5-year period. And then number 3, we look to minimize our resident impacts as much as we could. We did this by grouping projects by neighborhood as much as possible when it made sense based on the condition of the streets. And then one thing that I'm sure most of you remember that I really hit home on was that reclamation projects are about twice as expensive as mill and overlays. So with that being said, we really want to focus on the mill and overlay program and get those streets completed before they turn into reclamations, which is a much more expensive effort. So, and don't forget that mill and overlays can become reclaims quickly. In a matter of a year or 2, things can shift from one to the other. So it's very important to try to stay dedicated to that mill and overlay plan. So some specifics of the program, obviously extending the life of the pavements to minimize the reconstruction efforts, and then grouping the projects by neighborhood, focusing on the mill and overlays when practical. And then the last thing we did is we preserved $25,000 a year just for normal efforts that come up that Chad and his team have to do, patchwork, any minor efforts like that. So that was a number that we came up with at that time that we preserved on an annual basis. And lastly, now that we're a state aid city, we've established a state aid street system, so we'll be able to use state aid funds to ultimately pay for those improvements on those routes. The last part of the pavement management plan was a seal coating and crack seal program. what this does is it basically extends the life of the pavement structure before having to do that first mill and overlay or before having to do the reclaim project. So essentially what it's doing is it's sealing up the pavement surface and not letting the water get in, break apart the pavement over time with the freeze-thaw cycles, and then also in the summer months it helps with pavement oxidation from the sun. So it's kind of a twofold benefit to that program. The council at the time had allocated about $30,000 a year. That's what they were comfortable with doing. So with that, we can't do obviously all of our streets for $30,000 a year, but we did focus our efforts on the collector streets, which get more of the heavy use. Gets the truck traffic, more ADT, average daily traffic. So we took that money and we focused on the collector streets. And what we're trying to do is seal those pavements up within the first 3 years after they've been newly paved. That's kind of our overall goal is by year 3, let's try to get them sealed up. There's a lot of counties that try to do it in year 1, in year 2, but we're saying as a general goal, by year 3, let's try to make a point to get our collector streets sealed up. Okay?
Mr. Schmidt, can I ask a question on that?
Yeah.
What was it the 3 years? Is it just because for us to catch up, or is that kind of an industry standard, but it sounds like the county does it different?
So that was always kind of a general standard, but you hit on it well too. We're still kind of playing catch up from previous projects. So maybe that is something that we can work towards in the future. But right now, when we created the plan, it kind of naturally worked out that we were kind of on this 3-year lag.
If money wasn't an option, would you advise to do it sooner?
I think we would, yeah. I mean, Scott County does it. Actually, they do it right away, even in year 0 sometimes. So the same season as they pave it, they'll seal it. Otherwise, year 1. I think Carver County's going to that. I don't know, Dan, if you know of any other ones, but it's...
First 2 years is desirable.
Mm-hmm.
How many years of extra life do we get if we do it 1 or 2 years sooner?
I think it's hard to quantify that. I think just the general results have shown, based on my conversations with these counties and agencies, that it is definitely beneficial. I don't know if you can really quantify that.
Is it better to prioritize new seal and coat over catching up? So if you do a mill and overlay, are we better off focusing on those and doing the seal and coat right away than trying to do this catch-up work? What's a better return?
Mm-hmm. So the way that I have the plan laid out right now is any of the new streets that we are going to be touching with the mill and overlay or reclaim, we are planning to bring into the seal coat program. So I think to answer your question, we are doing that. But
at a 3-year interval, not 1 or 2.
Correct. That is correct.
Okay.
Any other questions before we jump into the 2023 project? Okay, so I'm going to try to do one thing quick, how to minimize. Here we go. Alrighty, so the 2023 project in particular, this is a snapshot of what the pavement management plan, going forward I'll say PMP, just so you know that, just a little easier to say. It contemplated the River Oaks development. The streets shown in red here, so all the neighborhood streets, those are the mill and overlays. And then 4th Street, which is the solid red line, is shown here as a reclaim project. So those are the 2 things that we were looking to do with the pavement management plan. The streets are about 20 years old now. So as you can see, 4th Street being the higher volume road is already deteriorated past the mill and overlay, and it's into a reclaim category, whereas the internal development streets, actually 1 year older, are still holding up better because they just see that much less traffic. So So altogether, the PMP estimated about $1 million to do all these streets, 400,000 of which was going to be locally funded out of the city's street maintenance fund account, and then about 600,000 being from the state aid funds. And then lastly, Monroe Drive, that street was done 3 years ago actually. That's a main collector street south of 212 that'll continue to be propagated to the west as development continues. So that's definitely one we want to pay close attention to and maintain. That'll be a very, very expensive reconstruct someday, so staying on top of Monroe will be really important. The PMP estimated about 31,000 for that seal coat, and that's currently just a local route. It's not on the state aid system, just because there's no connection right now to another state aid street. So someday Monroe will definitely be on the state aid street system, but it isn't today. So together between the mill and overlay, the reclaim, and the seal coat project, the PMP estimated about $1,018,000, 421,000 of which was from the city's street maintenance account, and 597 out of state aid funds. Okay, any questions so far? All right, so where are we at today? So we have the data point from the estimate we did last year for the pavement management plan at $1,018,000. What we've done over the course of the last month or so here is we've refined those estimates based on where we think pricing is coming in today. And the core estimate for the street maintenance project is about 100,000 over what we thought last year. So that's purely, that's a pretty simple answer. Bituminous prices are just more than we thought. You know, they're north of $100 a ton right now, and the plan estimated about $90 a ton, which was at that time a pretty conservative estimate in my opinion. So that's just where the market is. Now there's three main things that I want to talk about that we're currently scoping that is up for council discussion and feedback, but that's adding more money to the project. So in totality, as currently scoped, we're at about 3.6 million, which is 288,000 over the original plan estimate last year. So the big one is ADA improvements. We have about $127,000 in ADA work for the project. This is something that we just didn't contemplate when we first came up with the ADA or the PMP. Something that through the process of doing the ADA transition plan, it really shed light on what the deficiency is in this area. Before we did that, we didn't really have an inventory on how these facilities are, if they're compliant with ADA or not. So now that we have that, we're showing all the pedestrian ramps are actually deficient along the corridor. 4th Street in particular has the most pedestrian ramps. There's a few within the development, but the bulk of the ADA work would be along 4th Street, so along your collector street system. So it's something that is actually required with the federal requirements. So it's not something that's very easily just set aside. Just so you know that. And our recommendation would be, since we are doing 4th Street, it's your collector street, that you should do the ped ramps now. Otherwise, they could legitimately go another 20 years before you look at doing them. So that would be the recommendation on those. The second is something that actually came up through the open house process. So we had an open house in October for the project. And one thing that was contemplated or brought up was, number one, where's a safe spot to cross the road on 4th Street?
Aaron, do you have a figure for this?
We do. Yep.
Just get to that so they can see it.
Okay. Yep. So the far right of the screen here, so 4th and Reesgraff or Gilflin, that intersection right there is actually a 4-way stop controlled intersection. And as you know, it's safer to cross at an all-way stop versus doing a mid-block crossing. So one thing that was brought up was, well, can't you just cross at High Street? I guess the impetus to it is, so we have a trail that goes to Community Park, which kind of goes out to High Street right now, kind of goes to nowhere. So making a walk or trail connectivity to get to the 4th Street system was the goal there, which you can see on the right would go down High Street and then go, a partial block down to that all-way stop intersection. Okay, any questions on that one?
Can you describe the pavement conditions for the council there, because you're proposing 2 different types of pavement?
Oh, for the
Hard surface?
For the connection? Yep, so that was something that was discussed. The property owner at 802 was actually at the open house, which was nice. His main concern was having a trail facility along the side of the yard versus a walk facility. So the sidewalk would be along the side of his house, and then once we got to High Street, that last connection up to the community park system is trail, as shown.
And can you remind us, is that like 2 feet wider? What's the difference between the sidewalk and the trail?
Yeah, so the sidewalk would be 6 feet and the trail would be 8 feet.
Okay. And then is the homeowner responsible for shoveling the sidewalk?
So we talked about that too. Ooh, Brent, you're gonna have to remind me on that one.
Yes, sidewalks are responsibility of the property owner, trails are responsibility of the city. So this, as it's shown here, the city would haul the trail connection along High Street into Community Park. The homeowner would be responsible for the sidewalk. On what would be, the south side of 802. It would be similar to the properties along 4th Street going west towards Jonathan Carver
Okay.
Parkway.
Mm-hmm.
I have a couple of comments on that if you're finished, Lori.
I'm finished.
Okay. So back in Park and Rec days, so the trail dumps into High Street, and that's always been kind of a problem that it just ends there. But when I'm looking at this too, this is, and I was just going to bring up the whole snow issue. It's kind of relevant to today. That's adding, I mean, 2 sides of their property. That's a lot that we're expecting homeowners to take care of for an after-the-fact trail that's coming in.
Over 300 feet.
Over 300 feet. After, or sidewalk, I should say, not trail. Sidewalk coming in after the fact of buying their home, to buy a home and then have to add that much maintenance. I mean, let's just say we have an able-bodied person right now who can do it, but what happened if this was not an able-bodied person who may own that home? Just a minute, Eric. There's also, I know that there is a trail section that's a little farther down on this block that leads from the back of Community Park where the field is and that volleyball court that does come over onto Gilfillan as well. When I first look at this, I'm a little uncomfortable with adding this. I like the connectivity that we can move people around. I'm not sure that this is going to be the best way to do it, considering the homeowners, considering what they call trailblazing. So when you can build a trail straight or curved, and you want people to follow that curve around, but they're just going to go straight because they're going to go to the path of least resistance. So I'm wondering if it will even be as effective as we're hoping it would be. And then I have another question for the width of the sidewalks. The width of the sidewalk on Reese Graph, what are those at right now? Are those 6 feet? That seems awfully wide to me.
They're only 5 feet, I believe, right now.
Okay. And then the ones that we put in on Kirchy, the newer section that was down from your house to, I can't remember the next road down. Dietrich.
Mhm.
Do we remember how wide that one was?
5 or
In a little
6.
while, but
I think it was 5. We were so tight in there with driveways and stuff, so adding even that 5-foot walk before you slope back up to their garages was getting pretty tight. So we did a 5-foot walk on that section.
So would this be considered then having the 3-foot boulevard and then a 6-foot sidewalk? or a
Yeah.
3-foot boulevard and then an 8-foot trail?
Yeah, I would recommend maintaining a boulevard.
Maintain a boulevard.
Yes, for
Mhm.
sure. Yep.
And what is the width of that easement right there?
I don't know exactly what that is, but it looks to be maybe 11 or 12 feet. Just
We would do it all
rough.
within the right of way.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Right, I'm just asking what, 11 to 12 feet? So the whole.
Well,
right-
actually, 4th Street's a little wider, so it might be a little more than that. I'm just looking at the lane width on 4th Street just for perspective.
Mhm. Okay. I guess then just to recap for me, that's a lot of sidewalk to add to an existing property owner's responsibility. If it was there when it was purchased, that would be a, buyer beware, you purchased it like this. Again, I am a little bit worried about the trailblazing. I feel as if they come and take that right on High Street there, they're just gonna pop across 4th Street anyways, rather than walking all the way back to the stop sign. I think that by nature, if you want to get to the other side, you're not going to walk that entire length to hit a stop sign to go across. So I don't know that it's going to be as effective as we're hoping on paper.
Yeah, just a couple of comments that might help. And I understand the property owners are here, just for your knowledge, the council usually doesn't have conversations during work sessions, but one of the things that we originally proposed was to have this as a trail, knowing that the city would then plow it. The property owners, at least at that time, were opposed to that. They, at that time, at least said they wanted a sidewalk, just from an aesthetic standpoint. But we proposed, just because of cost and because of maintenance issues, to have it there. It has been identified, as you know, Councilmember Mock, in the city's walkability plan to make a connection there. But it's a policy choice for the council related to maintenance. I mean, if you're going to choose to not shovel a side or maintain a kind of a sidewalk at a specific location over other sidewalks, those are just some follow-up comments related to those.
I have a question. I'm sorry if this is remedial education for me, but is the primary function the connection to the trail?
As for this new pedestrian facility,
Right.
correct.
That's its primary function.
Correct. There's anecdotally, when you're walking from the downtown up 4th Street, there isn't a great connection unless you're going to go down Gilfil and into Community Park. You'll, see a lot of folks do that mid-block crossing at High to get into the Community Park trail system. And so it's long been a goal to try to make that connection. And then when discussing it with the engineering team, their preference is not to have a mid-block pedestrian crossing, to bring it to the 4-way. And so that's why you see some additional scope here to, in their minds, create a safer pedestrian crossing rather than doing it at High. But again, we're at conceptual level, so whatever feedback the council has, that's what we'll take in. So there isn't plans for this. This is the concept that we took to the open house. Now we're taking to the council saying, what do you want this concept to develop into?
So without further education, I would tend to agree with Cindy about the burden on the property owner to maintain that much sidewalk if the primary function is a trail connection. I get the sidewalk in front of the house, that's everyone's use up and down the street. But if primary functionality is a trail connection, I would agree, that would be my concern too, is the burden on the property owner. Can we revisit trail connection? Do we need to have the property owner's input into that?
Yeah, I mean, you can have the input, you don't need their consent, to be blunt. I mean, it's a matter of what facility or what pedestrian way do you want there. Because at the end of the day, it's, property owners move in and out, homeowners, et cetera. From a long-term walkability and maintenance standpoint, whatever you feel like the best choice is for the city. You would include them there in the room.
It means I need to further educate myself.
Sure.
That's my knee-jerk.
Sure.
So when we're looking at this is city property, this triangle. I can't see what I'm pointing at, but this is city property right here. So I want to propose an idea. So we, down at the bottom of 6th Street and Broadway, we've now taken out that stop sign, so we've created a curve. We've added the flashing pedestrian crossing lights. I know that this curve right here, I mean, we would have to do some, taking a look at it, but this is just kind of a out there thing. What if we took the trail down through what we already own and then added a ped crossing down here with and added those flashing pedestrian crossing lights like we have on 6th Street now? And that way, then we would have a trail connection there. We wouldn't have to, the homeowner wouldn't have to be concerned with maintenance on their end. We'd be using property we have, and then we could connect into the sidewalk across the street with using the flashing yellow lights, which we just started to use. We've got them up on, I think there's some on 11 there too. I know we have the big overhead ones. I couldn't remember if there's some lower ones. But I know on 6th Street, because we took that traffic control measure out, we put those flashing lights in for pedestrian awareness. Just another thought.
Yeah, I appreciate you thinking outside of the box. That's still a mid-block crossing, and there's a curve that continues there, so it's not ideal, right? Isn't the goal to have it at a crossing? And that's what we did along 6th Street, is it's at a crossing. So, I certainly, as someone who snowblowed a long stretch of sidewalk today, I certainly get the concern about snowblowing long stretch. For me, the easy solution is we put a trail in there, because it is a trail connection, and that's what we're aiming to achieve here with this, right? That's a really popular trailhead. As you know, the CCYBSA season starts going, there are folks who park in the community parking lot. There are folks who park along Kirchie, and then there are increasingly more folks who park along there. There are folks walking all the time, so I think it's an important trail connection. That is a trail to nowhere, and as we look at completing the loops of our trail system, that's one of the remaining trails to nowhere. So I think it's important to get that connected. At the end of the day, and I know that we're having a snowier than normal winter, but it's less than half the year where snow removal is a concern. But if we put that burden onto the city, then in my mind that solves the issue.
My thoughts are trail versus sidewalk. I agree there should be a connection to that trailhead somewhere. I appreciate putting it in a safe place. We want to keep residents safe as well. So yeah, I think you're right, Courtney, that having it as a trail and having the city be responsible for the maintenance is a good solution.
If we were looking at a trail, were you talking about having a boulevard or having trail right up to curb?
I personally would still recommend a boulevard just for snow removal. It just.
Brent, in our ordinance, is the minimum trail width 6 feet or 8 feet? I don't recall.
We don't have a minimum
We don't.
width by ordinance. It's, and Chad's on the line, but everywhere that we have a walking facility back at curb, it's causing a snow removal problem because especially frankly along Kirchie, not to bring up that project, but the team is having to plow that a certain way to try to avoid all that snow landing on the sidewalk, and then having the homeowner deal with this huge ridge of snow, right back a curb on that sidewalk, and then putting it back. And so there's space for a boulevard here on an 8-foot trail without, I would say adversely impacting the property. And frankly, we were looking at adding a trail from 4th all the way to JCP just to kind of mitigate the existing sidewalk issue. All the homeowners on the south side of 4th Street now have sidewalk on the north side of their property and are having to shovel that to Jonathan Carver Parkway, where their driveways are on the other side. So they're all responsible for going around to the back side of their homes without access, frankly, and maintaining that. And it's a major, I would say, pedestrian thoroughfare.
Which one?
4th Street,
Just along Fourth Street.
the south side of 4th Street where there's the walk.
Oh, that one, okay.
So all those
okay.
homeowners are shoveling that or snow blowing it, et cetera. It looks and feels like it should probably be a trail along a collector rather than a sidewalk. It's a 4-foot sidewalk, I think, in that stretch.
It's like, I think it goes like 4.5 to 5. It's pretty
But
narrow.
it became, very quickly cost prohibitive to do that. And so that's why we ended up showing this concept that was just focusing on trying to make that connection. But, you certainly could expand the scope, if you're willing to, and say, like, let's bring it all the way to Jonathan Carver Parkway as a trail. It connects into the other trail system. But you can see how these things kind of start to stack up.
So Mike, if this goes forward, the 8-foot trail, so the trails that we've been adding are generally new developments right now, right? So they're well fit in, they're well, maneuvered to have that 8-foot in there. To have an 8-foot trail in an already existing neighborhood maybe seems a little expansive to me, that maybe a 6-foot trail would be something that would be a little bit less intrusive. I know that the 6th Street Trail is how many feet wide?
8.
5, 6, 6 feet,
We went from 6 to 8.
but it was 6.
Yes.
The nice part about it is it fits our snow removal equipment better on the 8-foot. So on a 6-foot wide trail, we're probably tearing up some sod or having to bring out a special piece of equipment just to get this section.
Or getting a plow job that looks like this.
Yeah, but it's, again, you just said it's not snowy all year long, so,
Yeah, but if the idea of the trail is for walkability, you want snow removed off of it, that's the issue that they're debating.
mm-hmm.
I mean, one of the things that, Aaron will get to is we're recommending to the council that the 4th Street part of this project don't occur till 2024. So it sounds like maybe the council maybe needs some space just to kind of think about it, drive by it. So let's maybe just put a pin in this till we get to the end of the presentation and then think about how you want to incorporate your comments into the final product. Aaron, do you want to continue?
Yeah.
If that's okay
Yeah,
with the
that-
council.
Yeah, that'd
Yeah.
be good.
Sounds good. Okay, just one last thing for additional scoped items was there's kind of a remnant piece of a gravel drive connection up to the Tower 2 site. So with the Lakeview Industry Development, we now have access to most of it via paved surface. What I've shown in red there is kind of that remnant last little couple hundred feet of gravel that that public services would really like to have paved at some point. It's kind of a nuisance condition, just maintaining it both in the summer, they have erosion issues, and then in the winter, keeping it plowed out, it just creates issues for them. So they'd like to try to get it fit in as soon as possible now that most of it is paved. So that, I think that was 26,000 is what we had.
Can we have Chad maybe say a couple words on that?
Mm-hmm.
Can I interrupt too? Is that on Lakeview's property?
It's on Lakeview's, but there's drainage and utility easement over it.
Chad?
Yes. What was the question?
I just want a little more feedback from you about the needs for this to be paved. I'm just gonna start off with it. It's not like a highly traveled road. It leads to the plant there. So if you can enlighten us a little bit on the importance of it and why.
Well, during the summer, like Aaron said, we have had erosion issues. Lakeview does have irrigation in the area, so just having a paved surface is easier to maintain both summer and winter.
How often do you have a truck that visits that tower?
During the winter, every snow event. During the summer, at least twice a week. And it's it's all washboarded out right now. So it's extremely bumpy and hard on equipment, hard to maintain.
Do we have to grade that? Do you have equipment that can do that for the Class 5, or do you have to would you have to hire someone to do that?
We would be able to do it.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so this is kind of the overall funding summary that shows where things fall per major funding source. So the street fund, the first bucket is the city's local street maintenance fund. So that is coming in pretty much right at our original estimates in the pavement management plan, $1,000 over right now. The MSA fund is really where it hits it pretty hard. That's the 4th Street work, like I was saying, primarily due to the ADA improvements and then what we were contemplating for that pedestrian connection. That's where the major additional money is coming from. Then lastly, the utility enterprise funds. That would be funding the driveway connection up to Tower 2. And then Public Services inspected all the gate valves on the project area. As you may recall, last year we ended up replacing several gate valves with the 2022 project via change order. So this year we proactively went out ahead of time and looked at all that stuff.
Aaron, would you mind just sharing, just for the group's benefit, what a gate valve is and how it functions within the street?
Yeah, so a gate valve is something that's on the water main system. So the city's, potable water distribution system. And it's in the street. It's about this big around. You might have seen them. Basically, that's a valve box, so you can take the cover off. And then underneath it, you can put what's called the key, and that goes down, and you can physically close the valve down. So Public Services has to isolate the water main, say there's a break. They need to be able to go down, turn a series of valves off to isolate the system. Otherwise, you're going to keep losing water. So Chad's team has found a handful of these that are in this year's project that we have to go down and physically fix them with the project. So that's what the bulk of the additional cost is. And then lastly, there was a lot of manholes in the street, more so than what we would typically estimate for just a scoping estimate for a pavement management plan. So there was like 60 sanitary sewer manholes that have to get reset when we do the reclaim. So that just adds a lot of cost when you're talking about, $500 a piece. So between all those things, that's where the money is really adding up. And that's all coming out of the utility enterprise funds. So we have sufficient fund balances in the enterprise funds. The street fund, it's basically as planned, so there's really no change there. It's all in the MSA fund, which is going to what our recommendation is, as you'll see here. So obviously, no reason why we shouldn't complete the mill and overlay streets. But 4th Street is what is really, in our opinion, what's kind of the discussion for tonight. So our recommendation is just pure, clean process with state aid. It makes sense just to delay it a year, just so you don't have to overdraft on your account this year. It's just more of a conventional project delivery. There also is a small benefit. I showed the 2024 project, as we mentioned. We'll finish out the neighborhood next year. So by waiting to do 4th Street until 2024, you're naturally working yourself out of the neighborhood, and then you'll be doing the collector street last. So you won't be driving on top of a brand new street you just paved last year with, dump trucks and equipment and that kind of stuff. So just from a pure staging and construction perspective, it actually does make more sense. When I originally looked at the pavement management plan, I wanted to do all these the same year, but we just didn't have enough money, so I had to push some of it to 24. I had done 4th Street just because it's so highly traveled, so it's more of a public perception decision than anything, is how willing are you to let it go just one more year. So that's kind of the key, but keeping in mind it's a reclaim, right? So it can be done. And then the only other thing would be some of the perception about, we've already done an open house, we've had some communications about the initial project. So those are the key things that I think the council needs to kind of debate and figure out how you want to move forward.
And then just to one little circle back to the pedestrian piece, one of the things that, not that this was a driving force, but what the timing allows us to do is we could send some survey crew out to this area, and we could, basically put some paint down and show different trail widths so that you all can see it, the Watkins can see it, and have a conversation this spring or summer on what type of pedestrian facility we'd like to see in that location without feeling like we have to decide it right away tonight or this winter, etc. We can put some stuff in the field and you can take a look at it, and we can meet and have some type of connection or agreement on how we want to proceed.
If I may, Aaron, so right now, as you've got this laid out for what I would refer to as the traditional 2023 Project Plus, which includes ADA, the driveway to Tower 2, and the trail connection, we're $145,000 above budget.
In the MSA one, in the MSA account, is that what you're asking?
Oh, so we're a
Yeah.
total.
Can you go back to that?
Yeah, here you go.
Okay, total of 288, but that includes the.
That's
extra.
all in, all those things that we just talked about, that would all be included in those numbers that you see on the screen.
And we're dipping into MSA funds to the tune of $145,000.
Yeah, so what, the other piece of it, I forgot to mention on this slide, is the original plan already assumed that to get this project done, we'd be going about 90,000 in the hole. So we'd be dipping into it another 145. So we'd be about 235 in the hole for our state aid account, which is kind of, being so young
Pretty
into
close to
that,
our first year.
it's like, do we really want to do that?
Because 2023 is the first year that we're getting money into that account.
No, so we got our first allocation in January of 22, so we have 252,000 in that account right now.
Okay.
We'll be getting our second allocation here in the next couple weeks. So we'll have about $500,000 in there
Okay.
after this year's allocation. But we'd be, the current estimate's about 750, so we're gonna be about 250 in the hole.
Okay.
And again, these are estimates based on concepts.
Mm-hmm.
So once, Aaron and Dan and their team put together plans and specs and whenever it's bid, so just for the sake of not over-promising and under-delivering, this is based on what we know now, but the conditions can and will likely change by the time you get bids. So this is our best estimate based on the current conditions, construction, scope, etc.
Very good point.
Okay.
So I think one of the things we're looking for the council is, can you verify the scope that you'd like us to proceed with for the 2023 project? And then the corresponding timing, and then the next step would be for Bolton and Mink to bring back plans and specs to a future regular meeting, so that they could be put out for bid. Primarily dealing with, are you comfortable with pushing 4th Street back to 2024?
If this was already answered, I apologize, but so if we're borrowing against our future MSA funds, how many years down the road does that basically put us at negative or zero until we have a positive in that account?
So in theory, if we get the same amount of money next year, so we'd have about 750 next year. So we'd be about back to even by the end of next year's allocation. So in 2024, you should be back to zero.
If we go ahead with the original.
Yeah.
And are those MSA funds, is that a stagnant number, or does it fluctuate?
It's all based on a calculation that deals with the revenues from, your registrations and your taxes for the, what do you call that again?
Motor vehicle sales.
Yeah, motor vehicle sales tax. So it fluctuates. This year, we actually are gonna get a few $1,000s less than last year, believe it or not, so.
Okay.
But, one of the things to consider is we're not doing state aid projects every year. So the next state aid project is in 27 Mount Hope Road, or 26?
I think it's 26, Brent.
So,
Another thing to keep in mind is you can use your state aid money to do other things. So, you know, CASA 40 is something that we're gonna wanna start looking at, obviously, so if we ever wanted to do a study, a corridor study on CASA 40, you could use state aid funding to pay for the study, so there could be some benefit for thinking about that too, is there might be some other things we wanna do with that money besides just purely the 2 projects we have planned in the next 5 years, just throwing it out there.
Sure. Okay, Brent, then this is a question. So if we are looking at taking the turn back on CASA 40 and Mount Hope, are the, right, well, I mean, the doing the improvements and things on it though. So we're looking at doing that, Mount Hope. Those numbers are going to stack on top of each other. I know that we're getting some money from the county, but we had talked about doing some other things in that section also. So are we gonna come to a big head in a couple of years where we're trying to fund extra for that and then Mount Hope?
No, so, the million, just over $1 million from the county is essentially what our engineering team said we need to do that project.
Okay.
So you don't have a future project, and I would say, and once County 40 is added into our system officially, we'll get more money from state aid every year, so
Okay.
theoretically, by the time we need to do another project after this current one that we're working on, we'd have enough money to do another project in 20 years, et cetera.
Okay.
So it's not, they're not working against each other, they're working with each other.
Okay, perfect.
One of the things when, you know, Aaron brought it up, and I've shared with some of you is, just through conversation, is the idea of doing 4th Street in 2024 is appealing because you eliminate heavy dump trucks and other types of construction equipment from going across a newly paved road. And so, you know, think about kind of mopping the floor on your way out of the kitchen to get all the footprints off. Like, you know, they could stage it so that that 4th Street would be blacktopped as the last thing kind of going out of the neighborhood, eliminating that heavy construction equipment. First of the year, had to get that first.
You had to get one out, yeah. We
Had to get one out.
Yeah, you know, I love that. Love them.
Yeah. To me, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for 2024, we have some seal coat work planned, but the only other mill and overlay or reclamation that we have is that area north of 4th Street, Gilfillan Grove and Sibley. Correct? Am I missing something?
That's correct.
You're correct.
Okay. Just thinking out loud, does it make any sense to do all the mill and overlays this year? That doesn't necessarily
We don't
save
have
us
the
money.
budget though.
You don't-
Or is there,
We don't have the budget.
if we
to
take
pay
four,
for
if we
it.
take 4th Street out, I'm sorry.
But 4th Street is being paid by state aid.
Yeah. So you'd have to,
Using
Okay.
our payment management plan.
you'd have to do an
Gotcha.
interfund
Sorry.
loan or special capital fund to
Okay,
Yeah.
cash flow
I
it.
had the same thought,
I was
and then I
just-
did that, I went, okay,
Yeah.
no,
okay, I did not get there until just now.
it's okay.
I don't have any issue with waiting for 4th Street, because I think mopping the floor, literally and figuratively, but then also it sounds like we have some trail connection issues, and I know it's way more money, gives us a whole another set of budget issues, but boy, that would be nice to put that in as a trail along.
Have we done a budget estimate on converting the sidewalks from Gilfillan to GCP?
Yeah, I think you have that number, don't you?
I should have had that.
Come on,
number pulled.
all the
We
numbers.
looked at that.
We had the
We had
number.
it like a month ago.
I want to, it was in excess of 100,000.
It was north of 100 for sure.
That was my guess.
Yeah.
Okay. I agree with you, Courtney. It would be really nice as we're mopping the floors to put in a nice, beautiful trail.
I mean, waiting does give us an opportunity. We could apply, you know, there's, the DNR has a trail connection grant, so we could, you know, take an opportunity to try to see if we could get some, a 50% funding to take that on, so.
Yeah, for sure.
Delaying 4th Street by a year gives us an opportunity to survey what financial opportunities are available, have a conversation with the Watkins, do some field work, see what makes sense in real
Yeah.
time.
I'm down with that.
we're looking at right there, so that address, that's 798, I believe there's a sidewalk, like on two sides, right? The front of the house and the side.
Yes.
I would like to see that better represented as a visual, just so we kind of know.
Oh, it's because the black line.
Yeah, I think it's just being covered up by that black
By
line.
the lot line,
Yeah.
where the.
Unless you actually go out there, you wouldn't
Yeah,
know
so
that.
they have a sidewalk.
Yeah, so I think what we could do is just
Or
take
just
some
a
street
future
view
street, yeah.
photos.
Yeah.
In future presentations.
Okay.
Okay. Christine, thoughts on 4th Street?
I've had a lot of thoughts on 4th Street, so
In pulling it for 2020.
I would like to pull it, yeah.
Eric?
It's hard to miss Brent's analogy there, so it seems like a logical course of action.
Got another fan of the analogy.
Mopping the floor on
Here
the
we
way
go.
out.
It's gonna be a long
Well,
one for
no, I
Christine.
mean, if there's an opportunity for grant money,
Yeah.
that would be
Yeah.
another real
Yeah.
serious
Okay.
consideration.
So I think the direction that we're giving is to proceed with the proposal of continuing with the 2023 mill and overlay as planned, but pulling 4th Street and putting that on pause
But
to do in 2020.
what are the council's thoughts on the water tower pavement?
Oh, I'm fine.
I'm fine with that.
I'm fine just because I trust what Chad and his team are asking for.
They need access
So
there,
they need access.
better access. I'm fine with everything else.
I'm okay with it.
Perfect, thank
Right,
you.
thank you.
Exactly what we needed.
Thank you.
We'll work on a correspondence back out to the residents who are in the neighborhood, in general, everyone who was on the open house list, kind of summarizing the conversation and the plan forward, so folks aren't gearing up for the 2023 project thinking 4th Street's gonna be down, and
And can we do some social media to accompany that too, please?
Hmm.
All right, so you have what you need to continue forward.
I do, thank you
Okay.
very much.
All right, thanks, Aaron. All right, up next, item 3. How are we doing for time? Okay. Utility billing overview. Ms. Shuby, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Thank you for allowing me to be remote this evening. Tonight I am going to be talking about some utility billing changes that are coming our way. I'm really excited about a lot of these. Some of them have already started. Can you guys see my screen?
We can.
Yes.
Perfect. So what kind of changes are we talking about? So there's some cosmetic changes, there's enhancements to the utility bill, there's a calculation change, and then I will be talking about what kind of communications are we going to use to let the residents know about these utility bill changes. So cosmetic change, as you can see, the previous bill on the upper left-hand side was showing that water and sewer did not read in the same units. I'm not sure how many of you Carver residents noticed this on your utility bill, but the water was reading in just a single unit, while the sewer was reading in thousands.
Lynn, I think there are 5 of us who did not notice that, judging from the body
Yeah,
language.
I noticed.
I noticed it because I was trying, when I was looking at it, I was trying to figure
I
out what
did, actually.
units we were talking about on the water, and then I'm like, what is the sewer? Anyway,
Yeah, it drove me nuts just because
Okay.
I'm
love it.
I'm a numbers person. I'm like, why is it 9 and why is it 5, 6, 6, 7?
Right.
You know, and the other thing is, really, we should be charging in 1,000 gallons, so that should have
Right.
never been 5, 6, 6, 7. So now, if you look at your utility bill, water and sewer usage will read in the same units, and so we are rounding that to a whole number, which represents 1,000 of gallons. So in the lower right-hand side, you'll see that the sewer is now an 8, the water is a 7. I'm much more pleased with that. Some bill enhancements that we're hoping to roll out, also coming up with the new bills. We're working with our bill printer on this. I think Joyce sparked this idea, which is great. It's a supplemental chart that will show up on the bottom of the residents' bills, and it will explain their water usage and how it's broken out by tier, because Carver charges by a tier, which many cities do. But over on the left-hand side, you can see where it shows the 11,000 gallons that this resident used, but it also shows the different tiers that Carver charges. So in tier 1, it's $4.67 and so on. So this resident can see that after they reach their 10,000 gallons, their water gets much more expensive. So now they're paying $9.34 per gallon, per 1,000 gallon. So we're hoping that our printer can put the supplemental chart on the bills, starting with their January bill, which they'll receive in February.
Lynn,
This
I'm
is another
sorry.
change that
Can I
go
just
ahead.
be critical on I love this. I think this is great. I think that this is so like clear.
Yes.
I think there's a little room for misinterpretation of the like 467. I read that as per gallon. And
Yeah,
that makes
it
my
should be
jaw
K
drop.
gallon.
Yeah, could we do like, if
K
it's
gallon.
not too late, could we say like, yeah, K gallon?
Absolutely, yes.
Yes. Because I've always wondered as well, like on the header for where it shows your water line and it shows the 11, you see usage, you see previous read, current read. None of that says a metric, right? Nothing says 1,000 gallons in parentheses or whatever. It'd be $11 as far as I know, right? You just don't know what that number means. I don't know if there's any way we can add to that header just to be clear that these are 1,000 gallons.
We can make sure that it's somewhere on the
Yeah.
utility bills.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Good catch.
So this is another change that I'm really looking forward to for the new year. This is proposing to change the actual sewer ordinance. Being that the way that we charge our sewer average, we would need to change our ordinance. So what I'm saying is that currently residents are charged for actual sewer usage based on their water consumption, only for the months of January, February, and March. The remainder of the year, residents are charged their sewer usage on those 3 months average. So say we have a snowbird and they're maybe not here in January and February and they're here in March and they use 2,000 gallons of water. They're charged that average, that super low average for the entire 9 months of the remaining year, no matter how much water they use. So what I would be did somebody want to say something?
No.
Okay, so what I'd be proposing, and this is very common practice too in many cities, is changing our ordinance, this is written in ordinance, that residents be charged for actual sewer usage based on their water consumption for a 6-month period, just to get a better average. That would be November through April. And then the remainder of the year, during those warmer months, they're charged the 6-month calculated average.
Lynn, before you move on from
Yes.
this one, so does this adding the months, does this add extra staff time, work, things like
No.
that? Okay,
Our computer does it all, yep.
okay. And so I can understand what you're saying, the January through March. Is it imperative that we go for a 6-month period, or rather than just do another 3 months, but you having some different months in there?
Is there any reason why we wouldn't use actuals for 12 months out of the year?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I think so. Just like 3 months, 6 months.
Yes, so I just actually took a complaint from a resident today he was a new resident, he moved in September. And when we have a new resident, we don't know what their average should be, so we start them off with a 5,000 gallon sewer average. Well, that was too high for him. But he used 8,000 gallons in September of water, 48,000 gallons in October, and that's why you wouldn't want to use actual water to charge your sewer out, because that bill would have been
It would
somewhere-
fluctuate so much, you're saying, every
And
month.
the sewer is so expensive if you base it on the water.
Okay. All right, fine.
because it's a straight $7 and whatever
Yeah,
per
that's
1,000
true.
gallons.
And just to add on to Lynn's comment, so like summer usage or warm weather month usage, that water's not going into the
Right.
sewer. It's car washes, it's on your lawn, it's watering plants, and so
Yeah.
that's
going
the,
through
that's the
it.
basis for segregating the months by warm weather, cold weather.
Okay. So then the November through April makes sense, right? That's not your lawn watering, your outdoor car washing
Yes.
activities. Okay.
So then, Lynn, with what you're proposing with the November through April, then the residents see the new charge on their bill in May? The new average?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. My only thought with that, and I don't necessarily know that it's a criticism, but I just feel like we're on such a cycle of like January 1, the fee structure increases, the water rates could potentially change. I worry that that will be confusing to have it switch, have one component of that bill switch in May. But I think that that's something that we can communicate.
I think we
and share
can
with
communicate it
residents.
because, right, the target here, why we're choosing November through April is that's truly your sewer usage, right? Because it based upon your water usage, because that's the water is based upon the stuff that's going through your house and the system. It's not going under your lawn. It's not going under.
And
your
it's already a mid-year change, but I
Yeah.
just,
I think we can explain it. We're trying to give a more reasonable number to residents to charge for sewer.
that was just my only thought.
Are you, just follow up, so are you saying from the change from having the new average in April to May? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I just thought that if we're making a change, having another mid-year change could be confusing. It's
You
not a
realize,
hill I want to die on.
but you realize it
Yes.
changes, okay.
Yep.
It's already
But I thought we
changing.
might have the I don't know how that it would work, but it would be nice in a dream state, right? If everything could change all at once instead of having one component.
Right, and you certainly, I mean, that's the council's prerogative to like enact this, should you choose to move forward with it, to enact it whenever you do, you just want to get it done, so it aligns with, the months of the year.
Yeah.
You're gonna have situations where folks are actually saving money because, to Lynn's example, some folks are paying too much based on an average, and then it's, you're kind of arbitrarily rewarding folks that call in because, they have I forwarded the message to Lynn, this gentleman who called, he had a 5,000 gallon average. And because he called in, we were able to do something with him. But there are probably, tens, maybe hundreds of folks that aren't looking at that and they're just paying their bill. Conversely, there are folks that are probably paying 1,000 gallons worth of sewer and are using way more than that.
Yeah.
And so from a financial standpoint, this is probably should be really a cost neutral. It's just a better way to be able for the staff to articulate usage rather than saying an estimate. You're getting billed for what you're using during those months. But again, how it's implemented is entirely up to the council if you choose to move forward.
Or just a comment. So, any other questions, comments?
I'm good with that.
Lots of newsletter explanations.
Lots of communications opportunities.
Yes.
Just out of curiosity, so we're restructuring this. Are we at risk of having, you said we'd be at balance, but if we're recalculating sewer use, could we potentially go down to a threshold where it impacts our budget? I mean, is it?
I'll defer to Lynn, but I would say no. I mean, there isn't anybody that would have such a huge difference between their actual use and what they're being billed for, either to the plus or the minus, is gonna call, or we'd flag it internally.
Right now, the calculation includes some water on your lawn, right, for sewer?
No, it does not. So you'll be billed sewer based on what you use for water January, February, March. And so no one's watering during those months. So if my family uses 8,000.
But you're changing that.
You'd be expanding it, so your average would be based on 6 months. So,
I get it.
Yep.
I think it gives a better snapshot.
It's a better
Yeah.
snapshot,
Yeah.
plus
It is.
we're charging actuals for 6 months out of the year versus 3 months today, right?
There are,
Yes.
right, and there've been, if Brenda Efta was, I mean, there've been, I've lost track, but a lot of the calls for service are disagreements with what the estimates are versus actual. And so this just kind of lops off a
Yeah.
whole big chunk of, at least for 6 months of the year, if I use 5,000 gallons of water, I'm getting charged for 5,000 gallons of sewer.
Yep.
And so it hopefully is a more transparent way to communicate use with the user.
Yeah.
And conversely for me too, I think it's a good point to say that if you are a snowbird and you're gone January, February, and half of March, then you are underpaying and the rest of the community is catching up your slack because
For
of
sure.
that, so.
Yep. Just sounds more accurate to me. Okay, I like it.
Okay.
So if the council decides that they want to go through with this, I would follow the same process for any ordinance and post it in the newspaper and at City Hall. And this is what Dave has helped me compose. So each customer will be charged based on actual monthly water consumption for the months of November through April. Due to irrigation during warm weather months, each customer will be charged during May through October based on the subject property's average monthly water usage during the previous November through April. And then we just crossed out some unneeded verbiage down here, and that would be amending our current ordinance. So how would I communicate these changes? Obviously in a newsletter, on our website, Facebook and Twitter, and then a utility billing message. We would actually put some notes out on when the bill goes out.
Love it.
And I have a timeline here. So the cosmetic changes, as you saw, were completed. The enhancements, February, March, and then the calculation changes, which would be the April. The April is when the new average is calculated. And then the communications, I could start immediately. You know, I'd say that we're pretty good at sending out communications to residents. So I do have some examples of what I would suggest for a communication. Let's see. You're still seeing my PowerPoint, I think, aren't you?
Correct.
Yep.
All right. Here we go. So I have just something I threw together, just utility bill changes are coming. Residents will soon receive a bill that with a new look, and then I talk about the chart, and then I talk about the calculation change with the new averaging if it's approved, and then I just direct them to our website. Also, another thing that we started, which is really fun, is
Sewer
so
accounts
fun.
are very
We
fun,
love
you're right.
How much fun you have with your job, Lynn.
it's let's see here. Sorry, I'm really bad at sharing my screen, apparently. Okay. Brent also helped me with this. It's a high water usage notice. And so we're being more proactive in the utility department when residents have high water usage notice, high water usage, anything over 40,000 gallons. We're proactively sending them one of these high water usage notices, letting them know, hey, you've used a lot of water. Why don't you check around your house and make sure that one of these following items isn't happening at your home? And here's some ideas on what to check for. So here's just a kind of a copy of what we're sending.
I love it. I love it.
Yes. Yeah.
Lynn, this is great.
And then again,
Is there an opportunity when we're talking about outdoor watering habits to talk about the
Ratio.
ratio program that we
Yes.
have?
Yes, I would do that because, so personally for me, I'm like, would I ever hit this 40,000? Like I really just, whatever, I just pay my bill. But I looked at our usage in 2021 versus 2022 in the summer. So, because we got the ratio at the end of summer last year. So we didn't use it really through 21. We only really used it through 22. We would have hit that 40,000 gallon in 21. We didn't this summer. So testament to the system working, like I have data. So yeah, I would highly recommend that we put a link to that.
Yes, we have a great spot on our website that talks about the ratio, and as it gets closer to the springtime, I think we plan on doing a really good article about outdoor watering habits and then highlighting that device, so.
But are you saying that it should go out in this notice?
Yeah, I'm recommending adding it to this.
Yeah, adding it to this as well. Just because,
Oh, okay.
To
yeah,
the high water.
check
usage
into this.
limits.
It'll help you.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, and I'm sorry, but for your utility bill changes article for the newsletter, underneath the graphic you have the paragraph begins, the second utility bill improvement is a calculation change. Can we just say the second utility bill change?
Oh, sure, yeah.
You know, because I will always get folks who will argue that that's not necessarily an improvement. So just maybe take out the word improvement. And
Yeah, the
reword that
second
sentence.
change coming is
Yeah, the second
calculation change.
deals with how we calculate the monthly average or something like that.
Yeah,
Perfect.
I think this is all good stuff, Lynn.
it's fantastic. I will be able to decipher my water bill better and watch my usage. Yes.
All right. Any other questions for Lynn, or can we squeeze
No.
Vicki in here? Okay.
Yeah.
Lynn, thank you as always. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Item number 4 for tonight: the Mount Hope Cemetery rules and regulations. Ms. Sanseiden. Good evening.
Yes, good evening. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Yep.
Thank you. As you know, back in the fall of 2021, we, as staff, reviewed the ordinance and the rules and regulations relating to the operation of Mount Hope Cemetery. At that time, several changes were made to help us manage the cemetery process. Now, in working with those rules and regulations over the course of the past 1 year or so, city staff has found that it is necessary to make a few more changes. And these changes really will help us, number one, manage the cemetery process a little bit more, meaning we have sometimes questions that come up that we're like, well, that we don't really have that identified in our rules and regulations. Or it might be a clarification on wording. Well, what does that really mean when it says this or that? Or an issue comes up, something comes up and we're looking at our rules and regulations or the ordinance and it's not really identified in there, so we're not being consistent in how we're implementing this. The other piece that we're looking at in actually doing this is beefing up the legal requirements, and in working with the city attorney on this, in incorporating statutes and ordinances versus the rules and regulations, and making sure that we are also following some of those legal items. I know that there are a lot of details in these documents, and we wanted to give you an opportunity to look at these and have an opportunity to ask questions, give some input or some feedback before we bring the final version to you for consideration of adoption at a future meeting. And so I would open it up to any additional questions. And then I do have one other change that I would like to implement that I would talk about at the end. But before I do that, I would just open it up to see if there are any questions on the document, on the changes that we are recommending.
Vicki, my question is the difference between the rules and the regulations and then the ordinance, so that if I don't conduct myself appropriately within the cemetery, I can get ticketed or be fined or something like that?
Yes, according to City Attorney Anderson, he said that exactly.
Okay.
That if we didn't have that in the ordinance, we really don't have anything to fall back on. So that is the reason that we have both. I was like, can't we just incorporate everything into one document? And he indicated that we have to have some things in the ordinance so we can do that.
Okay.
And then other things in the rules and regulations to allow us to be able to manage it.
So this
You're
will
exactly correct.
make these now punishable offenses and put more teeth to this.
that's what he indicated, correct.
Great, okay. Any other questions?
I don't have any.
I don't have any. This all looks like really common sense and
Okay,
thorough and
all right,
that's it.
No questions on my end.
we're ready to hear your other change.
My other change that I had talked to City Attorney Anderson about today, just in the last 2 days, so end of last week and beginning of this week, we had come across another situation where we're getting a lot of verbal requests for placements of monuments. And so we do have an informal form that we are using, and we would like to incorporate that as part of what we're going to require. So we would just add that as one more item in the rules and regulations saying that we are going to ask you to put it in writing. We're just getting too
Nice.
many verbal things, and it's starting to cause some issues.
So as far as like where on the plot the monument goes?
Not so much that. The issue's really been when they have a double lot. They're just giving us verbal information or asking verbal information, like which person is on which side, and I think that opens it up for some errors to happen.
Okay,
Makes complete sense.
yep. Sounds good. Any questions, comments, concerns?
No.
No.
All right. Vicki,
Thank you.
I asked you to shoehorn that into 10 minutes, you did 5. Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, city manager's report.
Just have one thing. I'm starting to explore finding a facilitator for strategic planning and goal setting. And just if you want, you have some time to think about this, but there's kind of 2 ways we can play it. One is kind of like the standard, kind of what we've been doing, which I think has been more of a generating goals or tasks for staff to do. I do think there's an opportunity, we haven't done this for a while, but to kind of dig a little deeper and go into like strategic values and try to understand kind of big picture stuff that you want to get at. Sometimes when you kind of keep adding on the tasks, you have an opportunity to maybe lose sight of what like the big goals were. And so depending upon where you want to land on that, maybe you just feel like, no, there's a list of things we want to get done. Let's go ahead and do that next thing. Based on what your strategy is for that will kind of help me figure out what kind of facilitator we would need.
Can we do some of both?
Yeah.
Because I think I don't want to say the task list, it's not the to-do list, but I think that is important because I do follow that through
Yeah.
to see, that we're getting to where we
Yeah.
are hoping on those.
Great question. I guess I probably under communicated that, or it would be both. I just, if you no matter what, you'd end up with a task list of things you'd want to get done. There are some folks that might be a little bit more transactional to get that done. There are some folks that I know of that are really good at getting you that transaction list and like facilitating a discussion that gets you at kind of some maybe core things that what do you want Carver to look like in 20 years and how do we get there and how do we identify those core issues. And we have those loosely in different documents, the Carver Way, et cetera, but heading into this kind of next city council, maybe you want to reestablish or affirm some of those.
Yeah, I like reestablishing, revisiting,
Yeah,
kind of making
30,000
sure we're all synced on that 30,000 foot view and aligning all of those strategic activities towards that. Like it.
That works.
See, you're nodding, okay. Sorry.
My head's in the way.
Yeah. Did you get the direction you're looking for there? Okay. Any council requests? I have one. I saw your email today about more vandalism in Lions Park, and I would like to look into whatever we need to do, cameras, lights, signs, motion activated.
I second that.
I actually said.
Because that's such a,
It's
a good
repetitive.
play. It's repetitive.
Yeah.
It's nasty. It's disrespectful. The Lions put a lot of time and money into that, and take as much ownership into it as the city does. But if there was anywhere in the city that it's a good location for that kind of thing because it's rather secluded. You can't necessarily see it from the parking lot.
Yeah.
It's really getting under my skin. I don't
Yeah.
want to see it stop.
I agree with you, Courtney. So I actually emailed Brent back today, And I said, although I generally never advocate for cutting down trees, I think it is time that we.
I thought you were gonna say something else there.
Nope, that we cut down trees. I don't know what you were thinking. I
I'm not
wasn't
sure
there.
where your passion was gonna go.
Yeah, but yeah, it wasn't. But I think that now it is time to looking at clearing some of that hillside so that you have a better view shed onto that park shelter, because it keeps happening. And again, as Courtney said, city staff, the Lions, everyone has to go up there and keep cleaning up this mess. And if you're looking for a perfect spot, I mean, it's hidden right now, so it's not well lit. So again, I'm never for really cutting down trees, but I think maybe we should look at clearing that hill of some trees. We've got sight lines right to that park shelter.
Motion activated lights, there's a bunch of stuff that we
Something.
can do, and keeping it within the budget, which I know is slim, but.
Yep. Well,
I
we're,
was completely unaware that this was a problem, and it sounds like it has been. How about community awareness? Has there ever been anything published in the newsletter about this? Just so people have a heightened sense of awareness.
Something goes out
Look
this
for that.
spring, doesn't it, about vandalism? I mean,
Yeah, I think we put
something.
something out.
yeah, there've been, I mean, we can do it again. I think that's a good reminder, because, it's.
Wasn't on my radar.
Yeah, I mean, the hot spots, tend to be community park
Yep.
restrooms, Lions Park restrooms, and the pedestrian underpasses.
Do we have security measures in other locations that we haven't implemented there?
We have some, but they certainly could be enhanced.
Yeah.
I don't want to kind of
Right.
tell people what we have, but
I'm
I
sure
think
there's a lot of teenagers watching right now. I'm sure they're
that's
The tripwire is in the underpass.
Yeah.
But the Lions is repetitive. It is numerous times a year, and it's vulgar.
we'll come up with
No,
some
sorry.
menu options and
Perfect.
bring it back to a future work session.
Thank you, that's all I had. With that, 6:51, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
A second.
By Councilmember Mock and a second by Councilmember McKnight. Any further? Nope. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right, we'll see you in 8 minutes.
You guys good with that plan?
Are you going back that way or can I borrow your